In the book of Revelation, there are four horsemen that are described, and they're known as the Four Horsemen of Revelation. And it is a very popular subject in art, especially in medieval art. And when we look at these four horsemen of Revelation, you know, there are some interesting things to note here, because we have the first horseman who comes out, and this is called the white horseman. And what is written about him is this: "And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow. He was given a crown, and he rode forth conquering and to conquer." So we have the white horseman, and this represents conquest, war, and sometimes even plague. Then we have the second horseman, and this is the red horseman, and he is given a great sword, and it is written about him: "And there went out another horse that was red, and the rider thereof had a great sword." So we have the red horseman, and this one represents bloodshed, violence, war, and also famine. Then we have the third horseman, and this is called the black horseman, and it is written about him: "And I saw a black horse, and he that rode on him had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, A measure of wheat for a denarius, and 2 measures of barley for a denarius, and see that you do not damage the oil and the wine." So the black horseman represents inflation, but also it can represent scarcity and hardship. And then we have the fourth horseman. This is the pale horseman, and it is written, "And I looked, and behold, a pale horse. And he that sat on him had the name Death, and Hades followed with him. And power was given to them over 1/4 of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and by the beasts of the earth and of the sea." So the pale horseman, he brings death and suffering. But what is interesting here is that it says that he has the name Death, but Hades follows with him. So this is personifications, or they were personifications back then of death and Hades, of the grave. So they are personifications of death and the grave, and they come together. And the fourth horseman is probably the most scary of all four, because it's like the first 3 horsemen. They're bringing destruction, they're bringing hardship, but it's still somewhat tangible. You know, when it comes to the fourth horseman, this is where it gets real serious. This is where we're talking about death. Now let's take a look at the date that is written in the text for when these horsemen will ride. It is written in the book of Revelation chapter 6 verse 2. "And I saw the Lamb open one of the seals, and I heard, but saw no others. And I heard as it were the noise of thunder from the 4 living creatures, each having 6 wings, full of eyes around about and within. And they lifted up their voices and shouted as they shouted and as they gave their voices." Now, notice here, it says that John saw the Lamb open one of the seals, and then the other seals are opened throughout the book of Revelation. And as he opens these seals, we have different events that are being released. These are judgments that God pours out on the earth. But John only saw the first seal being opened. He didn't see the rest of them. So when he saw this first seal being opened, that's when he saw these 4 horsemen coming out. And what happens after this is that the Lamb goes on to opening more seals, and with every seal that is opened, there are more judgments that are poured out on the earth. So now, if we take a look at history, and if we want to figure out when the first seal was opened, when these 4 horsemen came out, we need to find when the Lamb opened the first seal. And it is very interesting because there are many people that believe that this has already happened. Many Christians believe that the opening of the first seal actually took place in the year 1914, and this is why. In the book of Revelation, chapter 8, we read this: "When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour, and I saw the 7 angels who stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets." So some believe that between chapter 6 and chapter 8, there is a gap in time. Some believe that the opening of the first seal happened in 1914, and this is when the Great War started, World War I. And this is why they believe that this is when the first seal was opened. When the first seal was opened, we saw these 4 horsemen coming out. And this is the time when World War I broke out, and also the Spanish flu pandemic broke out. And so they saw this fulfillment of these plagues, of these horsemen riding, and so they started counting from there. So from the year 1914, they counted forward 3.5 years, and that brought them to the year 1918. And this is when the Great War ended and also the Spanish flu pandemic ended. So some believe that these 42 months, or 3.5 years, or this period of time that is spoken about in Revelation, that it ended right here in 1918. Now, what is interesting is that when we go into Revelation chapter 8, verse 1, it says that when the 7th seal was opened, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Now, many people say that this half hour is the same half hour that the entire world experienced when the armistice was signed on November the 11th, 1918. And the reason why they believe this is that it said that there was silence in heaven for half an hour. Well, for half an hour on November 11th, 1918, the guns fell silent. And so they believe that this is the exact time that the 7th seal was opened, and that the 7 angels were given the trumpets, and that the 7 angels began sounding the trumpets, which would bring about the pouring out of God's judgments. So they believe that this is where the 7 seals start being opened, but it doesn't tell us in the text that the other seals were opened at this time. We only know that the 1st seal was opened. So those who believe this, they say that the 1st seal was opened in 1914 with the start of World War I, and then the remaining seals were opened in 1918 when World War I ended. However, we have people who disagree with this, and they believe that none of the seals have been opened yet, and they base this off of the fact that we have never heard the sound of a trumpet being blown. And if you look at Revelation chapter 8 verses 2 through 3, we read this, "And the first angel blew his trumpet, and hail and fire followed. And the second angel blew his trumpet, and as much as a mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood. And the third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star, which they call wormwood, fell from heaven, and did not have its rest on the mountains, and it was given power to torment those who dwell on the earth for 5 months, but not to kill them." So they say that since we haven't heard the blowing of a trumpet, we haven't heard the opening of a seal, and we haven't seen any of these things happen, that it means that this hasn't happened yet. And so they believe that these seals are still sealed, and they're waiting to be opened. And this is why. Now, I won't go into detail with the other seals, but if you want to learn more about when the seals will be opened, you can check out my video on the seals of Revelation. But the point is that if you believe that the 1st seal has not been opened yet, and if you believe that the 4 horsemen are still waiting to ride, then we need to be paying attention, because when that 1st seal is opened, when the Lamb opens that 1st seal, that's when the 4 horsemen are going to come out and ride. Now, are they riding right now? Well, some people believe that they are. And this is because we are currently experiencing death, we're experiencing destruction, we're experiencing hardships, and we're experiencing suffering right now. We're seeing a lot of wars in our day. We're seeing sickness and diseases that have come upon us. And this is why some people believe that the 4 horsemen are riding right now. Now, as far as the trumpets go, we haven't heard a trumpet being blown, so we don't know if the seals have been opened or not. But we are definitely living in a time where things are happening that are similar to what is written about in the book of Revelation. And so we need to be alert. We need to be awake and studying the Word of God.